Welcome to the Curious Competitor Podcast. I am your host, Carrick, a professional hockey player and podcaster by trade, a curious learner by choice. Together, we will investigate career design. How successful can I become in sport? And with what quality of life alongside this goal can I experience? The 4 areas of focus on this podcast are physical expression, mental athleticism, spiritual growth, and experiential wisdom. Thank you for joining me. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor Podcast. I am your host today, current American League defenseman for the Charlotte Checkers, Carrick, as we look into, along with our guest today, JB Spisso, on career design, mental wellness, and performance and fitness, and what it looks like at some of the highest levels. My experience is on the professional sports side. JB's is in the armed forces and in the consulting side. JB is a leadership and culture expert with JBS Leadership Consultants. He's the author of the Warrior Leadership Action Log, which is a tool he uses in his consulting business. He's a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces for 26 years with 10. And this is what it said on your website. It might be 27 at this point, but with 10 in the special operations with the 75th Ranger Regiment, retiring as Sergeant Major, the highest and most respected non-commissioned officer position in the military. JB, you've got a degree in organizational management and leadership from Nyack College, and then studied with notable sports psychologist Dr. Derek Anderson from 2014 to 2017. JB has consulted for the New York Rangers, the Florida Panthers, West Point, American Express, Coca-Cola, and many other of the finest organizations you and I, our listener, would be familiar with. JB, so I guess we'll start with a fluff. Like, where does the connection and love for hockey start? Like, I think I've seen you in the hockey community. I know you had a title with the Florida Panthers and things like that. What's the lineage?
Oh, that's a great question. Kid born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I will say that I was a average high school hockey player, but had a love for the game. Obviously, loved the Penguins and everything to do there. And, I just kind of grew up around it, working at West Point. I started, coaching mite and peewee and squirt hockey, started doing all that, worked with Army hockey a bit. My son grew up playing and, played all the way through college. And now he's a coach at Westchester Skating Academy. So it just kind of took off from there, the love for hockey there. And then, as fate would have it, the New York Rangers in 2005 came to West Point for for their training camp, and they were like, "Hey, they want to do some military stuff." And I'm like, "What do they want to do?" And talked to Tom Reddy, and he's like, something, can't get the guys hurt, but we want to do, something that mirrors what, soldiers do. No problem. And we basically, took them out in the middle of the night and ran them through this, like battle, march and shoot. I always laugh. It's like how we didn't kill anybody that night. I have no idea. And, it kind of started from there. And, people recognized in me that I had this gift of leadership, of this mental fitness, helping people with that. And that's kind of how it started. And, the rest is history. I played in the beer league until I was 50, and then I kind of hung it up. So there you have it.
How are you in beer league? Were you on guys telling them they gotta dig in, or was it a fun avenue for you? I'd hate to be on your beer league team.
It was great.
I feel like you'd be all over me.
I literally would bring a dry erase board in, and I would go over, listen, we're going to chip and chase tonight. And people would just laugh, and they loved it.
If you're going to compete, might as well do it well.
Come on, we got to work hard here. It was good. Yeah. So I enjoyed it. And, I just think it's, hockey is such a wonderful game. It really is. And when people see it, I live in Vegas now. Here in Vegas now, they've really taken it over. They're really trying to build, a youth hockey community. It's getting bigger. And it's great to see that people that have, never grew up around it, all of a sudden, they're taking their kids to it. And now they have these, these adult learn to play leagues, which I think are genius. And it's just such a wonderful game. And, it's a game you play at the highest level, and, we share a passion for it. So there you have it.
Yeah, I think two areas you've spent time in. Las Vegas is growing. And then, I remember I was at the age where Pittsburgh hockey was getting really big. I played up a year. I'm a 1994 born. I played up a year against the Pittsburgh Hornets, where they had like Vince Trocheck, John Gibson, Barrett Kibe. Who else was on that team? I think Rocco Grimaldi was on that team, and they only had 10 skaters. I remember they used to carry a light team. JT Miller, I think, was on that club.
Yeah.
And then down at the 94 level, we had players like Riley Barber, and I'm trying to think of who else, running a little thin. So from Pittsburgh, all the way to there was a story I was reading up on some other podcasts you've done. Help me understand your first day in formation. You're at Fort Benning in Georgia, and senior instructor comes out, and he has some choice words for the group coming in. And take over the story from there.
Sure. I joined it. I didn't think I was mentally ready for college. I didn't want my parents to pay for my college. So, that was my route to the military. My route to the military was I was going to go there so I could get my college paid for. And my goal was to, spend 4 years in the Army, go to college, teach high school history, and coach hockey and baseball. That was what I thought I was going to do. So, high school history teacher, baseball in the spring, hockey in the winter. That's how I was going to do. And then military just worked out for me. But that first day, you show up to Fort Benning, Georgia as an 18-year-old kid. We didn't have the internet back then. You weren't sure what you were doing. And, I could have been in Mars. I've never really been out of my, how it grows. You grow up, you travel, you drive around, but you never really been out of your town. Everybody. And there you go. And it, I went through infantry school, airborne school, and then I ended up in this Ranger indoctrination program. RIP it was called back then. It's now called Ranger Assessment Selection Process. But, the senior instructor showed up and he looked at all of us, probably 130 guys standing there. And I looked around and I'm like, man, I'm just not even in the right formation here. And I mean, bigger, stronger, faster, meaner, tougher. I'm like, here, I'm this skinny kid from Pittsburgh. And the senior instructor looked at everybody and said, I don't care if any of you make it. And I believed him. And there it kind of went. And I just said, well, I'm just not going to get cut today. That's it. I'm not going to get cut today. Let me make it. Let me survive it a day. And I say it a lot of times, Connor, when people are having a tough day, sometimes you can't even worry about making it to the day. You have to just make it to lunch. You have to make it to dinner. I'm sure you've been in situations you're like, I just got to make it through this practice. And that's where we have to, continue to train our mind and train our bodies to do that. We do a pretty good job at training our bodies, but, we have this big muscle in our brain and we don't do a very good job of training that. And we forget about it sometimes. And we have to do the same thing. We have to continue this belief system in each other. It's funny. My son and I were talking, and he's a young coach. He's, working his way through the ranks. And, he said, there's another coach that is in a sister program. And he's like, man, this guy's so negative. Like, he's like, these kids aren't even listening to him now. And maybe back in the day, you could get away with a little bit of that. But now you have to really try to find a way to get people's talent out of them. We have to be creative. These players have to be curious. They have to be creative. And that's what you want, because you get people to their highest level. So it's kind of all over the place there to answer your question, but.
Well, there are two components. I've talked to a couple different military personnel on this podcast, and I think athletes are always very interested in military personnel and their way and their culture, because there's such a texture, there's such a passion, and it's very demanding work that you do, right? So our sport very much feels like play, right? If you were to throw all the sticks in the middle and say, okay, this side you get to go to the military today, and this side you get to go to play 3-on-3 hockey. I think most hockey players would pick their stick back up and be interested in the hockey. But like, how do you maintain systems? And it was really key where you said there, it's easy to practice it sometimes, but to forget. There's two things in the military that I really try to steal and maintain a good relationship with, and that's high standards. High standards and short-term goals, right? Because I'm someone, I like to think big a lot of times, and all of a sudden, maybe I've got 82 game, goals, but it's game 7 and I'm not doing so well. And all of a sudden I feel like I'm behind this massive hill or this massive ball of negative momentum, right? So how in the military do you do those two things? Maintain high sense of standards and, maintain short-term goals.
The standards, the military is excellent at that. The military is excellent at standards. And the great thing about the military is, I could just speak from being in the Rangers, working at West Point, being a drill instructor, being an OCS instructor. Like if somebody didn't meet a standard, we never lowered it. We just increased it. For example, if you inspect you have a barracks inspection and, there's two young soldiers in the room and they fail the barracks inspection. Well, you don't say, well, you guys did pretty good. You say, you know what? I'm going to come back in an hour and now I'm going to inspect your barracks and put your full dress uniform on. Right. And then you just keep increasing the standards. So people are like, yeah, I just should have cleaned my room the first time. And you just keep increasing the standards. Or, yeah, that wasn't enough. Go run 5 miles. And that was the other thing. And I'll interject that. I never really allowed soldiers to complain, because if you start that complaining road, it erodes good discipline. And so standards are the keys to success. A lot of times in special operations, the standards are extremely high because, the risk is so high. You can take a small unit and do a big task, but that small unit really has to work together. And so you got to continue to, find ways to do that and challenge each other. That's the other thing. You do it. You're in a sport every single day in practice. You're challenging each other, and then you're challenging each other in the game. And I think that's why there's so many similarities between the military and sports. Obviously, the risks are obviously different. You can't compare, losing somebody to wins and losses, but you're in a high risk sport. You can get hurt, you can get injured. It's a read and react game. And I think those are some of the similarities that are together with the military. And I think a lot of people that play in the top level of sports could be in the top level of the military. I say that quite a bit. Sidney Crosby and I used to joke all the time. I said, if you weren't playing hockey, you would have been a Green Beret or something like that. So those are the things that challenge us to continue to go better. And the other part is that you want to continue to improve yourself. And you find in the military, just like sports, it's a job that eventually you time yourself out. You just get, you get a little too old to do it. I mean, I spent 26 years in the military, retired in 2010, and I probably could have went to 30 years. I probably thought I had about 4 good years left. But I'm like, you know what? This is a good time for me to now try my career change, which is another difficult thing. Look at athletes. When your career's finished, now you have to change, you have to step out, something you've been doing your entire life. I was in the military from 18 years old. I didn't know anything else, Connor. Didn't know anything else. And now you have to get out of that and you have to try a new career. And guess what? It's scary, right? And you're like, okay, well, I have to make my living and make my life somewhere else. And so I think those two similarities between the military and sports is why I have such a good connection with athletes, and I think why you have such a good connection with soldiers.
What would be an example of what leadership would look like in a locker room or during there is a long 82 game season, right? So as you're thinking, like there was you remember great coaches I've had or you've had mentors and where they forever change the way you approach something, right? With a very brief reminder of how something should be done or could be done.
Mm-hmm.
There was a coach I had, he's with the New York Islanders now, and Barry Trotz, and I didn't play very much for him. I was just kind of around and a couple call-ups, but he used to challenge his team and say, like, are we just playing, or are we bringing guys into the fight tonight?
Mm-hmm.
Are we just trying to play well, or are we trying to win the game? And you mentioned it there, we were trying to challenge each other, and it forever changed the way that I look around the locker room. I no longer just focused on myself. I no longer just focused on my game and just like making sure I could check the box so I could win the phone call to my dad after the game. Hey, son, how'd you play? Oh, I played good, but we lost, right? You know how it is. Like parents, they're like, hey, I wish you won, but I'm glad you played well. Right. But in pro sport, it's a winning business. You got to win. And the teams that win, the players that win get, more and more contracts, more and more opportunities. So, what does challenging a teammate look like to you in, the armed forces? How have you seen it done well in the pro sports setting?
Well, challenge is the most important. Your body needs challenge. You can see a lot of former military, former athletes after the careers are done. Sometimes they're a shadow of themselves. Maybe they gain weight because what are they not doing? They're not challenging themselves regularly. Like I really try to challenge myself consistently. And I don't do it great all the time, but I try to have benchmarks where, maybe twice a year I'm going to, try something new, or I'm going to do a Tough Mudder, or okay, maybe I'm not going to set a new world record, but I'm going to try to do something to continue to challenge myself. So I have something to look forward to and gain. In the military, it's always like, you want to shoot better. You want to move better. You want to communicate better. You want to get a little wiser. And I think that's very, very important to do. In my early career of the Rangers, it's run, gun, break glass, everything else. And then all of a sudden you get a little bit wiser about things. You're like, okay, let me get a little better at this, better at that. I was never afraid to learn. And I think that's where coaches, athletes, military people always have to look at other people to learn. So I was in special operations my first 6 years. And then I went to be a drill instructor, which is called the regular Army. Okay. And then I went back to special operations. So there I was, combat veteran, patches on both shoulders, all the badges, combat jump. I was the golden boy, made rank quickly. And here I was in this, as a drill instructor, and men that have never been in special operations. And after about the first month, I was like, I better get my act together, because these guys are the most professional, squared away, non-commissioned officers I've ever seen in my life. My partner, Joe Dixon, came from the Army Marksmanship Unit. Let me tell you, that's all he did was shoot. And I thought I was all this, super badass marksman, everything else. Connor, I wasn't anything to him. So you know what I said? I'm like, teach me. let me learn. Sometimes you got to put your ego aside. You got to check it at the door, and you got to learn a little bit. And so I think that's so important to continue to challenge yourself. Say, hey, how can we do this a little bit better? Open it up to people, get their thoughts. And then the other thing is, don't be afraid to push people hard. Okay. Don't be afraid to push people hard. Coaches should push players hard, but they have to push them hard in the right way. Like Barry Trotsch, I had a chance to talk to him one year at the NHL draft. What a just a wonderful wealth of knowledge when you're talking to him. And there he was challenging you, pushing you, trying to make you better. What are we trying to do here? And the other thing is I think the leader of the organization just kind of sets the tone. But the best locker rooms you've been in, people, they find that team chemistry to work together, whether it's a military platoon team room or it's a hockey locker room. That team chemistry is so important. And I think sometimes that gets away from us. And we have to really look at it throughout the organization and challenge each other. I remember Willie Mitchell, his first year in Florida with us, and we didn't make the playoffs. And everybody was like packing everything up at the end. Yeah, I'm going golfing. What are you doing? I'm going here. I go there. And he was sitting on his stall, and he was like steaming. And I used to call it coffee with the captain. I'd get 2 cups of coffee, and I'd sit with him right next to him, and he'd have a cup of coffee, and I'd have a cup of coffee. And he was steaming. He's like, I'm not used to this. I came from LA. We won. I won 2 cups. I'm used to being in the playoffs. He's like, these guys, they need to get used to being in the playoffs, right? They need to feel it, not like, and then he had a talk with them the next season, and then we made the playoffs. So I think it was so important to get people used to that, used to winning, used to competing, used to battle. So
Yeah, I really like that because it touches again on the high standards piece.
Mm-hmm.
I think it takes something that leverages a lot of times when we're licking our wounds, right? Your friend comes to you from the Army Marksman, division, and he just, outshoots you, right? It's a very maybe not humiliating, but humbling experience, right?
I remember the day we went out and shot, and he humbled me so bad. I was just like, wow, I suck. I suck. And he's like, you're actually not that bad. Is what he told me. He's like, and for, the regular Army standards, I was really good, but he was at another level. And I was like, okay, buddy, I'm ready to learn.
And that's what I love about really high end leaders is they're able to, kind of in the lows, in the defeats, in the locker room pack up at the end of the year, they can look around the room, kind of snicker through their teeth and go, there's growth to be had. There's something to do about this. This is unacceptable. Right. And there's a feeling and understanding of the hot, intense, negative emotions. But then there's a leveraging. There's a next step. There's an action plan. There's a surgical mind that comes in. How can we practice that? How can we cultivate this ability to get over, because something I hear a lot in leadership council, right? Is like, you got to believe in yourself, right? You got to believe in yourself.
Sure.
Easy to do when things are going well.
Right.
How do you repair bruised belief? How do you, when you're in the weeds, coach is smacking you around, you're struggling for a contract. How do you look in and create a process to build yourself back up? Right. In the military, they'll do it for you. They'll build you. They'll break you down. Right. You'll be there on formation day and they'll smack you around through, boot camp or they'll break you. Right. Next toy, you don't work. Right. But a lot of times in hockey, they don't necessarily. They'll just find someone else to go play. They'll just send the deal to someone else. So how can you have systems in place? How can you improve this bruised belief as I'm coining it?
That's a great question. So there's a couple areas here. First, it's funny because people are like, sometimes we want to compare the sport team to the military. Now, we have to understand there's a lot of things in the military that I can teach somebody to do. I could teach somebody to shoot. I could teach somebody to navigate. I could teach somebody to maneuver. Those are all teachable tasks. You were assigned to a team. Why? Because you're talented and can help that team win. All right. So now it becomes the leader's responsibility to try to pull that best out of you. I never liked it when I worked in, and I changed it. I worked in officer candidate school, and new officer candidates come in, and right away they're like on them, and they're trying to make them quit the first day. And I remember one of the instructors was like, "Yeah, I made 3 people quit today," and I'm like, "Why are you happy with that?" And I said, "People smarter than us have chosen those young people to come to officer candidate school. Like people smarter than us." Okay. I was like, I can make you quit. And he started laughing. He's like, you couldn't make me quit. I go, oh, I can make you quit. I go, all I need's time. All I need's time. I can make you quit. And I was like, so why are we doing that? These are supposed to be, the next leaders of our country. So why are we doing that? I was like, should we be hard? Absolutely. But we need to bring their talent out. So that's one thing leaders need to do. Because in the military, again, if I have 150 beds for special operations training, I'm going to have 300 men come in and try out, and I'm going to give them the hell week until there's only 150. Now, I'll ask you this, Connor. Did I kind of cut some of the most talented players? I could have cut possibly, but I'm looking for something different, right? I'm looking for something different. And that's why some selections, even to the top tier 1 special operations units, they look for other things. They try to take people a little bit older. They look for other things. For you individually, I look at as, and people listen to this podcast to build yourself up, you have to look at it as like a Post-it note, right? So if I wake up this morning and, I eat healthy, I write that down on my Post-it note. And If I do 50 push-ups, I write that down on my Post-it note. Now, 3, 4, 5, 10 Post-it notes together, you can tear up. But as you start building that up and that Post-it note becomes, a 4-inch stack, you can't tear that. So it's all one small thing after. And that's what we have to remember. We look at the big thing, the process, that Sports Center moment, but we forget it's all that small little, like when you were 15 years old, like you probably shot, 80,000 pucks in a summer. But it's all that number. It's all that number that builds on it, builds on it, builds on it, builds on it. And I think, we forget that. I had a great career and people were like, wow, you had a great career. Awesome. I want to be you. And I'm like, oh, don't be me, be better than me. And oh, by the way, it took me 26 years to get here. So it's all part of that. It's all part of that timing. So you need to be patient with yourself as you're continuing to build, and you need to continue to push yourself. And I think what you're doing is you're allowing people to find mentors to help themselves. And a mentor doesn't necessarily have to be older than you. See, that's the other thing. You can look to people younger than you for mentorship. It's so funny if I have a computer issue or something, I call my daughter. I'm like, hey, I need help with this. I'm getting ready to log in with Connor. I don't know how this Squadcast thing works. All right, download Chrome. Okay, I got it. I'm good to go. So we can continue to develop ourselves that way. And then find what drives you. Ask yourself this question. Like what was your drive to make it to the professional ranks? That's the question everybody has to answer for themselves. They don't even have to tell it, but they have to answer for themselves why they wanted to do it. I got a little bit lucky. Got in the military. I was in special operations young. I had a great mentor and leader. I look around and I'm like, man, if I'd have had that guy, I wouldn't have made it. Or if I'd have had that guy, I wouldn't have made it. But I had this guy who was tough as they come, but he knew I was a little bit of clay. So he had to do a little bit more molding. And it worked out for me. And so I always try to give that back. I always try to look over at people, give them the benefit of the doubt and give it back. But listen, I was hard as they come, as tough as they come on folks. But I think I try to be, I try to be the positive tough, if that makes sense.
Well, there's been certain, experiences over my career where coaches, or my dad or questions I'll ask myself, and it's that key word to me is questions, that really ignite the energy it is to be great, to be resilient, right? So John Hines with New Jersey, he's with the National Predators now. Highly motivational character, extremely creative verbally, right? Like I'm sure you've had these mentors in the military. Just he could, if he wanted to compliment you, he could do it creatively. If he wanted to put you down, he could do it creatively. Mm-hmm. And he had this awesome question. He'd look guys like dead in the eye and just say, can I coach you hard? Is that something you can do? Are you willing to be coached hard? And immediately that sort of open-ended challenge always to me was like, yeah, I want to be coached hard. I don't want to be left alone. And, don't yell at Carrick. He's a little fragile at the end of the bench. He'll fold on us if we try to push him, if we try to get a little bit more. And, I think that ability to sit with the struggle and sit with the negative and not let it overcome you. Understand that just because you are struggling, you don't have to struggle because you're struggling. Mm-hmm. It's so natural. And there was a player I spoke with last year in New Jersey's organization. I was in the American League at the time. And he asked me, he's like, Connor, how do I stay positive during the season? And I said, what do you mean? He's like, well, I'm feeling down. I'm feeling negative. Like, how do I stay positive the whole season? I go, you want to stay positive the entire season? Every second of the whole season?
Can't do it, right?
I'm like, when's the last year you've had like that? Right? And that's where some of that youthful exuberance starts to mature into veteran savviness. And all of a sudden, you're 0 for 3 on the power play, and you're like, That's okay. I've been 0 for 3 on the power play and gone 2 for 5 before. 2 goals. Right? And that's where the words poise show up. That's where the words resilient show up as an athlete. And I think it's you mentioned the Post-it note analogy, right? And this is where we could talk a little bit about it, because a lot of the reason we're connecting on this podcast is my dedication, appreciation for mental fitness, right? And what that looks like. And I think physical fitness is easy to identify. How much physical stress can you tolerate? How many reps can you do and then do another one? Can you recover and continue to keep going? Mentally, it's the same concept. Am I on the right track where mentally, what is your robustness? What is your athleticism to be able to handle a whole host of different stresses, right? So when you think of mental wellness and fitness, like what are some of your favorite tools to lean on? Because that's something I struggle with when I talk to younger athletes, when they say, what's the one thing you can do, right? There's journaling, there's breath work, there's meditation, there's visualization. There's just the training itself and making sure there's a mental component of going through the hurdle. But it's also easy to get swept away in all these different tasks and not actually focus on what's going to give you the biggest ROI. So what is your mental fitness routine is when you're working with a new client, particularly young athletes? How do you introduce them to mental fitness?
That's great. I love what you said before I answer that. I love what you told this player. You're like, how are you going to stay motivated? How are you going to stay positive the entire season? Because you're exactly right. You can't do it. And and the thing is Connor, you have to ride that wave. And as you get a little bit older, you learn to ride that wave and don't let the highs get too high and the lows get too low. But when you're a young player, you're young in the military, you're like, I got to get there. I got to get to this next level. Got to try this next thing. And you forget that everything's that surfer. I got to surf a little bit, but you learn that through experience. And that's what I'll tell all young people on this podcast. There is no shortcut for experience. Climb that ladder as fast as you want, please. Can't skip a rung, and there's no shortcut for experience. My mental regimen starts daily with, I'm a Christian and I start with prayer. So for me, that's what I have to do. I start with some prayer. I do journal. I think breath work is amazing. I'm not that great at it. I'm trying to get better. Any type of meditation and just taking time for yourself to de-stress. The best thing you can do in anything you're doing, whether you're taking a chemistry test or you have to do, 10 reps of deadlift or, you're getting ready to brief a big client, is you have to stay in that present moment. The problem is that, we're this big multitasker society, multitask, and then we don't do anything well. So sometimes you just have to focus on that shift that you're playing right now. You have to focus on that shift. This is the shift that I'm playing. This is what I'm going to try to do. The other thing is I want athletes to always remember is the opponent, like in the military, the enemy, they have a vote in what happens to you. So there's give and take in all of that. So every shift's not going to be perfect because they're not doing their job then. Not every military mission goes perfect. People get injured. Things don't go perfectly well, but you adapt to it, right? Because of your training, because they have a vote in what happens to you. So that's what you kind of have to remember. You have to be like, oh, that was pretty good. I see what they're trying to do there. I'm trying to do the, 60-foot stretch pass and they're picking it off. Okay. Cause they've done some of their homework. So part of that is understanding that. And the other thing I try to tell people to do twice daily is, they should do SILS, SILLS. It's SLLS, but it's called SILS. Stop, look, listen, smell. So, I'm doing something, I'm banging out, a report or a project, and I'm getting ready to do a presentation. It's getting a little bit crazy. Whether it's a cup of coffee or a cup of green juice or something, and I just walk outside and I take 2 to 3 minutes and I stop. I look, I listen, maybe there's birds or construction or whatever's happening. Doesn't matter. or smell my coffee or, whatever you're drinking, and just try to put yourself together. So you take 2 or 3 minutes to put yourself together before that next project. So you really, really have to do that. And you really have to say to yourself, okay, my mind needs some time. My mind needs a quick break. No different. You're in the gym and you're doing pull-ups, right? One of the hardest exercises, and you knock out like 20. You're like, man, I got to do 10 more. You can't do 10 more right there. It's physically impossible. You could probably do it, but I can't do 30 in a row, and so I have to, jump off the bar, stretch out a little bit. All right, let me knock out. Okay. I got 8 more. Drop it. Okay. It's the same thing for your brain. It's the same thing when you're going through things. So I think it's so important for athletes. So when you come back to that bench, sip of water, maybe a quick talk about, hey, what happened there? All right, we're back on it. Right? Light switch isn't off, but now it's to neutral, and now it's ready to go back on. I say even in my book, Warrior Leadership, get mad, get over it, and get on with it. That's difficult to do, and you have to train yourself for it. Like I know some players, and professional athletes, they're great at it. They're like, yeah, it's over, done. I'm like, wow, that's pretty good if you can do that. And then some players can't. So I see guy's going to be a Hall of Famer, Roberto Luongo. Like I remember him sitting in the locker room still with his gear on an hour after a game, and he's pissed because he let in a late goal that he should have had, right? Because we do want to do the best for our team. We do want to do the best for our group. We don't want to let people down. But what you have to first do is you have to put yourself together. Because if you don't do that, then you have nothing to give, right? You have nothing to give others. So we're always best when we're giving others, but we have to put ourselves together. And Connor, because you do it, it comes through a regimented routine. You wake up at the same time, you go to sleep at the same time, you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this, do this. That's why the military works. That's why we can take people from all walks of life, from every state. We put them together, and in 2 weeks, they look like, I love it when I was a drill instructor. Parents would come to graduation after 13 weeks, and they're like, that's my kid? That's not my kid. Holy cow. Like, they're like,
that's cool.
But I think that's part of it. And so that's how I do. I try to stay on a regimented routine. I try to continue to challenge myself. You need to put some mindfulness or some faith in your day. And you need to continue to hunt the good stuff in your life. There's a lot of great things going on in your life. Hunt that good stuff in your life. Don't forget that, you're healthy, you have a family, you woke up today, and, you have all your faculties about you. And so I think we have to continue to challenge ourselves. But what does that come with? You said it, Connor. That comes with experience. You're not the same player that you were when you were 19. You're smarter. You really are. You're maybe not hockey smarter, but you're life smarter. Right? So
I'm definitely hockey smarter. It's
and hockey smarter.
It's amazing. So, it's amazing the tips of the game that I didn't know, that I know now, that other players did know when I first came in the league. Like I was so heavily outmatched, and I think I really like the Sills comment in practice, because to use the analogy again to bridge physical training with mental training, the way I've tried to understand it of late is physical training like you're walking yourself somewhere. You're putting your arm around Connor. I'm saying, hey Connor, we're gonna do this thing, this workout today, this training exercise that's really difficult, and we're gonna go somewhere. We're gonna go to a place, an extension of yourself that might not feel comfortable. But now that we've gone there, we've started to walk along this trail, right? If you walk over kind of the same grass every day, you'll create a trail, right? That's how these trails are created. And ideally, you want to make this physical distance you can go to further and higher and more robust and all that. And mentally, it's the same thing, right? In the same way that our breath kind of grooves the inside of our ribs, our breath literally creates our physical posture. When we do sills, when we do breath holds or breath work in the morning, when we do these meditative practices, we create these mental pockets, these oases in our mind that are available to us at a later time when we are swept up, right? When the lights are on, there are 20,000 people. I did make the mistake, right? And the more often you go there, just like anywhere, when you drive to work, you don't even turn your GPS on, right? It's automatic. You do that. And mentally, I get this question a lot from younger athletes, like, how do I feel more confident? Do you practice feeling confident, right? Do you actually practice in your mind what it would feel like to score the big goal? How do I feel, more poised? Have you practiced passing to the other team, watching it go in your own net, and then coming back to the bench, having the coach yell at you? Sills, right? Have you taken the inhale, exhale, the squirt of water and gone, bang, that's over? And, when you're able to improve your competence and understand this is not a destination organized practice. This is very journey oriented. There is no real arrival point. Your confidence will constantly have to be earned. Your competence will have to constantly be challenged. And I think that, even when there's no substitute for experience. When you speak to someone who's been on these paths, right? So a younger player comes to me and goes, man, I'm struggling. I used to feel really bad for that player, right? I used to kind of empathize with them and be like, man, I was there. I know how hard it was. And now that I'm a little older, I almost smile. I'm like, I know you're going through something tough, man. Trust me, you need to. Because if it wasn't going to happen today, it was going to happen tomorrow. And that's where this relationship to struggle, this you can avoid the panic. You can be going through something brutally negative, and I'm sure you've experienced this in combat.
Sure.
Right? Actually, that's the next question I do want to pivot to. If there was something you've learned, and I understand, I honestly haven't talked combat with many veterans. I just don't necessarily go there unless they want to. But if there was something that you learned from combat that you could give to someone in a magic pill, what would it be?
Great question. I think the part that combat is obviously the first time you're in combat is, you trained. I trained for, 6 years of my life. And then I went to combat the first time and it was like, wow, what is happening here? And then all of a sudden you kind of understand it. And then you're like, okay, now I get it. I have to continue to make myself a little better. The part with combat is, combat is boring until it's not. That's really what it is. It literally is like that. It's boring and then it's not. And, I think it's all of the, when it's not, that's not the tough part because your training kicks in. But it's all the part before that, when you start to overthink everything else about it and prepare and back on the plan and this and that. And it starts to overwhelm you and like, oh my gosh, what about this? And so then I learned not to overthink a good plan. You have a good plan. You prepared for your plan. Now execute your plan. And I think that's sometimes what we do. We overthink a good plan. We have a good plan. We're going to stick with it. Okay. We'll make changes as we need to, but that's what we're going to do. And I think that's where coaches make mistakes, athletes make mistakes, military make mistakes. There are obviously situations that you have to go to. The one thing that I did do in this last time, in 2008, it's the last time I went to combat. Somebody asked me, like, are you worried about, getting shot at or getting killed? I'm like, no, I'm going to expect to get shot at. So I never even was like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't get shot at today. I wonder if we're going to get shot at today. I'm just like, we're going to get shot at today. So that was my focus. Is like, yeah, I'm going to expect that. I'm going to expect that the enemy is going to try to bring their worst. That being said, I'm ready for it. Okay. I have my resolve. My resolve is I'm going to come to a definite decision about something. I'm going to put my strength to it. So you know what? You're going to bring your best today. Guess what? I'm up in the ante. I'm bringing it to you. So it's on. I'm ready for you. I'm focused and ready for you on that. And I think that's important. And that was kind of my focus, and everybody picked it up with me. So they understood that. And they felt very confident with me because that was my focus. Oh, they're going to bring it today? Okay, go, it's on. Go ahead. Crack around past my head. See what happens. Right.
I think I read that in Ryan Holiday. It's a very stoic practice, which is incredible, right? Like these are, these practices are thousands of years old. And when I first heard it, it really helped me with my resiliency practice was really feel the worst case scenario, really practice it, really go over it in your mind. And then there's going to be a level of comfort that comes on the other side of the practice.
Right. And it's not to be like cocky or arrogant. It's not that way at all. It's just like, I expect you to bring your best. I expect it, because if the roles were reversed, I'd do the same for you, because I'm going to bring my best to you. So, you got a chance here. You got to, I'm going to make you vote. My friend, Eddie, he's a Delta Force Sergeant Major. He'd say all the time, I'm going to make you vote. You're going to have a vote in what happens to you today. So by fighting. So that's part of it. And I think that's it. And the other thing is that it's not that, you're not nervous, you're not scared, because everybody is, but it's like, we're going to do this. We're going to do this together. The other thing is like, it's kind of a coy term, but, I felt myself as a defender of freedom. I had 3 children at home. I was like, if this is my task to do, to defend freedom today, so they can have a better life, like my father did. My father was a World War II vet. They were defenders of freedom. So he fought in the South Pacific against the Japanese. Like, it was part of it. They were defenders of freedom, that generation. If I feel like my small part is to be a defender of freedom, then that's what I'm going to do. And I think that's important too. The other thing is you said it, you're like, how do you build confidence? You build confidence through repetition. You and I could go out and shoot pucks today. Okay. I suck at it. You're great at it. And if you said, JB, let's do, 4 pucks, 4 corners. Okay. You would have a lot of confidence that you would hit all 4 corners, and I would be lucky to hit the net. And how did you get that way? You got that way because of practicing that skill over and over and over again. Right. And that's so important to do. So if you feel like you're lacking confidence in something, then just practice it a little bit more. Put some more practice into it. Try some new techniques. And then I want I tell all athletes, continue to be creative. Continue to have that curiosity come out. That's why you see, some of these players at the, look at Ovechkin. He's 36 years old, still being creative. Crosby still being creative, right? So you still have to find this way to be creative about yourself, to continue that passion for what you do.
What I think is incredible too, like I've watched a lot of video on both those players you've mentioned, right? 2 of the greatest of all time, like two players that came in the league with monumental expectations, massive. They were heralded to be so good, so young, so fast, and they have now for so long. And if you watch film on, Ovechkin still got the big curve and the heavy shot and the boisterous hit, and Crosby's very, tactical, elite skater, unbelievable compete, his ability to replicate his effort, shift in, shift out, all
straight stick, basically.
Straight stick, right?
Yeah.
But when you watch their posture, when you watch the way that they do things compared to how when they were younger, there are slight differences, right? There's a certain growth you can see in Ovechkin, his body's different now. He's had to score and do things differently. Remember when he came in the league, he would shoot from anywhere and really try to test all these defensemen, one-on-one with this crazy speed. And he would throw so many big hits, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is awesome. But now he's a little bit more careful.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't get hurt. He's always available come playoff time, right? His stick is shorter now than when it used to. His one-timer is even more. He took this lethal skill in hockey anyway, to score with that one-timer on the backside and made it even more precise, right? And so, Sid, I remember reading an article. There was a big one when he was younger, and everyone asked him, Sid, what'd you work on this summer? What was the big, training tool? And he's like, oh, it was face-offs.
Mm-hmm.
I figured I'm good enough with the puck, but if I can start with it more, I don't have to chase it as much. If I'm not chasing as much, good chance I'm not as tired. If you're not as tired, you don't get to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And there really is such a methodical approach to some of the greats of the game that is so impressive to watch it and really fires someone like me up. It really helps me jumpstart and find the energy to ignite the talent,
mm-hmm.
right? And that's where, I don't know, I think that's something I've always been so impressed with in military personnel. And thank you for your service. If I didn't start the podcast off with as a defender of freedom.
Glad to do it.
There's a certain acknowledging of the routines that need to be in place to kind of service just our human needs, our human physical needs, our human mental needs that make room for this expression to train for combat, right? And this is something I urge a lot of younger athletes to do is understand the needs of your body, the needs of your mind, have some sense of routine, something solid to hold on to so you have expression elsewhere to be creative, right? You have sort of the foundations in place to take risks. You have the foundations in place to succeed at that new thing that you do twice a year, the Tough Mudder or whatever it is now, in your consulting that you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really is this yang yin approach all the time. I want to be big when the lights are on, but the reason that puck goes in really is because of the study after practice on Tuesday that you did on why your one-timers aren't going in, right? And it's this constant fluctuation of performing when the lights are on versus doing the daily monotonous work.
Mm-hmm. And I think part of it is while we're doing this, Connor, is enjoy the journey. I don't know if I enjoyed it at some point in my military career. I was like, okay, I got to do this. I got to get to this military school. I got to make this rank. And there was a part of my military career, I don't know if I enjoyed it, but there was a part in the middle. It was great, but I don't know if I was enjoying this journey I was on. And then towards the end, I did. I enjoyed it again. I think that's so important for a young athlete. I'm on all these veterans committees, and every time when there's an unfortunate, in a service member, is killed in combat, and somebody writes something about him, they always write about the great spirit the person had. He loved being a Ranger, loved being a Green Beret, loved being in the Navy, loved it, enjoyed it, didn't want to do anything else. And I think, we miss part of that. We miss part of that while we're doing it, we should enjoy it. And yeah, there's a little bit of luck to getting promoted in the military or to making it to the highest level. I saw all sides of the NHL being in it, so you see all sides. You sit in the scouting meetings and you're like, wow, there's all sides. And so, I always felt like I was the voice for the athlete, though, especially the unknown athlete. I was always the voice of that person. So somebody was in the room, pushing back a little bit against the scouts, which was always good. But I think we need to continue to do that, and we miss that part. And I'm in a part of my life now. We've had ups and downs. I'm in a part of my life now where I'm climbing again, and I'm enjoying this journey again, and I'm going to continue to do it.
I think it's really important you said that, because I feel I've been there. I feel like I've been in the tough part of my career. I've been in the part where I'm like, the last couple of years, that injury did not happen at a convenient time. I'm not I'm 27. This will be my 9th year pro. There's a different level of oomph at times than my second or third year. There's a certain sense of mission when you're first starting out, and I feel that, like that hero's journey. I feel like I'm in the middle, and so something I've actually been doing a lot of consideration on. You know, my wife and I, Lexi, we have a child, 10-month-old, right? And we follow this parents and psychologist who does a great job. And one of the terms that she uses is like, you know, I operate as a parent that my core belief is, you know, almost all kids, she'll say, are good kids. Just sometimes they're having a hard time. And so something I thought about myself was like, you know, it's not that I lack passion as a person. I'm a good leader having a tough time right now. And I think that those moments are going to happen. They are a fact of the course of human life, the course of when you're going at something that you love and you run into friction or adversity. Like, the key is not to treat that struggle or that adversity like a complete stranger. You have to know it's a natural part of that journey.
And don't ignore it, which I think a lot of times, like in the military or athletes, hey, cowboy up, toughen up, you know, don't worry about it. Like that, you know, the military's getting better at it, but it's still like, you know, when I was in the Rangers, you didn't talk about anything that was bothering you because there was a guy behind you ready to take your job. Yeah. So you're not saying anything, you know, like, yeah, coach, I'm in it. I'm good to go. Right? I'm sure you've done that. You're like, good to go, coach. Good to go, coach. No problem. You know, and inside you're like, man, I got to hold this together. So I think that's, you know, that's so important. That's so important to do and to deal with. And, you know, I struggle with it. And part of struggling is understanding and having an outlet you could talk to, a professional or, you know, a buddy, and find ways through things. We all deal with that. And again, it's all this, you know, we ride this wave throughout the day, right? Even throughout the day, we're going to ride the wave throughout the day. So, you know, it's kind of how we deal with that. And we got to learn to deal with that. We have to practice to deal with that. And, you know, it's not always perfect, and that's okay. You know, and, like anything, what are the two things that all military and all athletes and everybody, whether you're working in a factory job or an office, what do you control every day? Or we say, Connor, you know, your effort and your attitude. That's what you control. You know,
it's amazing. Like when I was a kid, I could not stand when some of the best players in the world, I'd get a chance to hear them talk at a tournament, or our coach would have someone in and they would say, do you have any advice for the younger players? And they'd stand up there and be like, you know, at the end of the day, you only control your effort and your attitude. And I'd be like, fuck that. Yeah. I want to know how do you make that backhand pass? Like, how do you literally hold your stick? And you got to get into the nitty gritty too. But I really appreciate you being a leader for doing the work, for being a champion of, making incremental steps over and over in different facets of your life, understanding the complexity of life and just how overwhelming and daunting it can feel, yet, you know, the simple availability to take really small steps towards your goals and being, you know, coherent and balanced again is available to you all the time and in a manner of different forms. And again, I thank you for your service, and I wish you all the best with, you know, all your consulting growth now. It's really cool to see. I mean, I had Randy Hetrick, the CEO of TRX, on the podcast for the same reason. I'm like, you know, here this guy was, you know, a Navy SEAL, you know, and then went to, you know, Stanford Business School to go and launch. Like, how cool is that? How difficult must that have been to be a beginner again after reaching such a pinnacle of a percentage of performance? Right. I
was a sergeant major in the Army. Like, I told people what to do, like, move out, go run, you know, let's go, hustle up, you know, but part of it is learning who you are and finding what you know. And I tell business people all the time, you know, if they see a veteran and they recognize, you know, something in that veteran, tell them they're good at it. You know, for me, it was Glenn Sather and Tom Rennie. They recognized something in me. Glenn Sather, you know, legend, Hall of Famer. he said, "You're pretty good at this." And I was like, "Pretty good at what?" He's like, "I see how people look at you." He's like, "You're pretty good at this. This is what you should think about doing. Leadership, mental fitness, motivation." He's like, "People need this in this world." And there you have it. So you recognize somebody, tell them. Space is big enough for all of us. Space is big enough for all of us, Connor. So, Connor, I love what you're doing. First off, your fashion game is awesome. I love your fashion game. Your coffee game. You're a great father. You're a great husband. You're raising a young child, and you're doing it. You're doing it the right way. God's going to be good to you, and I know that you're continuing to grind it away, and you're going to do it. And when this career is over, and for your next career, you have that too. And so enjoy this journey that you're on. Keep it going. I love the stuff that you post. I look at it. It inspires me. So you're helping people all around. So keep it going. So thank you,
JB. I really appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day. That's all I got, man.
All right.
Any
Thank you.
Comments? I do want to ask, where can people find you for further consultation? I know you're on Instagram.
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram at JB Spisso, or on my website at jbsleaders.com. I have a book out, Warrior Leadership, Steps to Success for Leaders on the Ground. That book's out. You can find that on Amazon. Also my action log. And you know what? I just want to tell people, just keep pushing it. Keep pushing it. So I'll leave a little quote from Heraclitus here, Greek philosopher. He said, out of every 100 warriors, 90 shouldn't even be there. 9 are real fighters, and we're lucky to have them, for they make the battle. But the one is the true warrior, and he'll bring the others back. So you know what? Keep working to try to be the one.
That's special. Thank you, JB. That's fire.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. All right.
I appreciate that.
Have a great rest of your day.
Same to you, buddy.
All the best.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.